Very good morning, everyone. I see the numbers are increasing in terms of participants, so we will let that flow naturally increase and colleagues join as they connect, but not to waste any more time and getting going on this extremely exciting moment and interesting discussion we'll be having over the next 90 minutes together. I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Andrew Bauer. I work at the Regional Office, Europe Central Asia of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. I'll be your moderator today, so speakers know me, and I'll make sure that they run the flow and stick to time. But of course, we'll have a chance to hear from different speakers on different aspects of the important topic at hand when we talk about flames of change, innovating in urban heat and wildfire risk governance. So I think we have here, as we were just discussing, a gender-balanced panel with a number of key experts in the field. We will have a chance throughout the presentations to collect a few questions and answers from the participants in the Q&A tab that you can use. So feel free to attribute a question by naming who it is addressed to, and I will make sure to collect those and bring them back to the speakers as we go along. We will organize this webinar in three broad segments. First of all, a set of introductions, and moving on to a first segment of the meeting, focusing really on the solutions that we can identify, and a second segment looking ahead. What can we expect for the future? What should we anticipate when looking at the future? And we'll then finally hear from colleagues and our dear colleague from the Union for the Mediterranean, who'll do a bit of a conclusion and wrap up of what we heard over the hour and a half. So without further ado, I'll quickly introduce our first two contributors. These are Sébastien Panzini, who is the ad interim chief of the Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia. Sébastien, thank you very much for being with us. And Eleni Mirivili, who is the Global Heat Officer for UN Habitat and is dialing in from a mission. So thank you very much for making the time. And you are also involved in a number of activities on urban heat. You are a lead expert and a global voice for this topic. We are delighted to have you with us. You are also here looking at issues from the perspective of cities. You have experience working in the city of Athens, and the background you have is extensive in this regard, and I think it deserves no further introductions at this point. So I'll start off by giving Sébastien the floor for a first few introductory remarks, and then we'll move on to you, Eleni. Allow me to call you Lenio, if you don't mind.
Thanks, Andrew.
And then we can
great.
Take it from there. Sébastien, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I would say from myself as well, very warm welcome to this webinar, and very good morning to all, or good afternoon even, possibly. So definitely it is my great pleasure to have a chance here to share a few words of introduction this morning. I will try to be very brief, since the most valuable contributions will come right after me from the speakers and the experts, who I already thank actually for their contributions. So if you allow me, I would like to start and to share with you a short anecdote, which I found quite meaningful. I quite rarely actually watch news on television for many reasons, but however, recently in August, I was watching TV exactly at the time of the evening news. And the program, which lasts usually for around 25 minutes, opened with information about a threatening wildfire happening in France. You would say nothing unusual at this period. True. The issue is that after this information, the presenter continued for more than 15 minutes, focusing only on ongoing extreme weather events and disasters. France, Italy, Slovenia, Greece, Algeria, Canada, Hawaii, etc. This long list was extremely impressive. And in total, it has been an entire half of the program which has been dedicated to disaster and to its impact. I really believe that this anecdote confirms once again, and if needed, the critical need to place disaster risk reduction at the top of the agenda at all levels, from local to regional authorities. So now I would like to say also that, as we all know today, climate change is also a game changer. and most of the time, we are not fully prepared for facing the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events. Recently, the UN Secretary General did not hesitate in stressing that we are now entering in the boiling era. I think it's also a meaningful statement. As an echo, and very more now specifically in May this year, 150 member states gathered in New York for taking stock of the implementation of the Sendai framework through its midterm review. Clear gaps and priorities emerged and are also relevant in our discussion today. First one, the systemic nature of risk and its cascading effects are not yet fully understood. Secondly, the coordination among actors in charge of disaster risk reduction still needs to be improved. Silos remain, and the overall approach is not sufficiently inclusive. And third, and maybe one of the most important findings from this midterm review, investment in disaster risk reduction are lacking behind. And a lot more must be done if we wish to stop the cycle of destruction, reconstruction. That's why I really believe that this webinar aims to exactly address these issues. First of all, it brings together the actors of the Sendai framework priorities, the scientists, the experts, and the practitioners working on risk knowledge, priority one. The local and the national authorities in charge of policies and plans addressing risk governance, the second priority. And the sub-regional entities and the development partners which contribute to these two initial elements, but also to its financing. Secondly, this webinar addresses a critical issue identified by national and local stakeholders themselves during the action-oriented dialogue hosted by Greece in November 2022. For Greece, as for many other countries, extreme temperatures, heat waves, and wildfires become an outstanding risk which materialize with dramatic human and economic losses. The evolving nature of this risk, exacerbated by climate change, requires an adapted approach where prevention takes a greater role and is considered as a valuable investment, no longer as a cost. This webinar aims also to showcase this exact type of examples and good practices. Third, it focuses on those who are at the front line, the local authorities and the municipalities. While more progress is needed for better articulating communication and also action between national and local levels, we already see that local authorities are extremely innovative, often well-structured and proactive for building resilience. For example, with the nomination of chief resilience officers, and we will have an example today. This webinar takes place also in the context of the Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative, which is a great example of local level networks and collaboration for reducing risk. The MCR2030 that you may know already or you may discover further today offers already a large range of tools and opportunities to support local leaders in assessing resilience and building plans for disaster risk reduction. It seems that today we are around already 130 persons around this virtual table and almost 500 expressed interest to join. I really believe that this first figure acknowledges alone the relevance of the topic and the willingness to further shift from response to prevention for reducing the human and economic cost of disasters. The examples which will be presented in a minute for adapting to climate change, for investing in nature-based solutions, for making critical infrastructures more resilient, and overall for answering risk-informed policies and investments are all replicable and adaptable in a very large range of contexts around the Mediterranean basin, which is already a hotspot for climate change, but also in many cities which more and more face the impact of extreme temperatures. And we have seen recently already examples in Sweden and in other countries where these risks are normally not part of the major risk experienced. I would like to thank again the experts who are going to share these good practices with us. And I would like to finally underscore that this webinar is a concrete step in the implementation process of the regional EFDRR roadmap 2021-2030, and that UNDRR, with its partners, will continue to support all of you and all stakeholders through different ways of advocacy, outreach, and also concrete support, and with different tools in order to build resilience at local level, and especially, and this is important, and I hope it will be addressed today, for leaving no one behind. I really wish you a very productive webinar, and I thank you again for being online today. Over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Sébastien, thank you very much for framing these upcoming presentations and discussion and the topic at hand. I think without transition, I would like to allow Lenio to share with us some of your thoughts coming from the perspective of your engagement in global urban heat discussions and issues, and with, as I said, such a strong background in that frontline work that is at the heart of all the work that local authorities are doing. So without further ado, Lenio, I will allow you to share your screen. I think everything is set. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Sébastien, for a great introduction to the work of UNDRR and the importance of cities. So I will talk about heat, again, kind of framing our seminar today, because heat is the mother load. It's basically, it's all about, wait, I have to make it into, just a second. It's all about global warming. We've been talking about global warming for a very long time, but we have really not been focusing on heat and the effects of extreme heat on the different levels of impact that it has on our populations and on our cities and our ecosystems. We know that this summer has been particularly difficult, and it has had this unusual phenomenon of having these heat domes, as they call it, actually span the whole of the northern hemisphere. And we know that the July was the hottest month ever recorded, that the temperature of the sea surface temperature was the hottest one ever recorded. And so this has been a particularly difficult summer. Europe has been heating up twice as fast as the global average. So we are already talking about, while the rest of the globe is talking about 1.1 or 1.2 degrees, or maybe even a little hotter with this particular summer. In Europe, we're already talking about 2.2 degrees. And this is very much something that is of concern. Because we are dealing with extreme weather phenomena more and more, and we have to figure out how to actually put more attention in how we deal with risk reduction. And this is something that we, I think for me, this slide is still a shock, because I think very few people that are decision makers and policymakers realize that extreme heat is really linked with an extraordinary number of mortality, and that it really is it is the number one killer in relation to all other types of disasters. And I think I show this slide, and it still kind of shocks me to see it. So heat is particularly dangerous, of course, for urban settlements, because of the way that we have built our cities, and because of the way we heat and we cool and we move around our cities, and we use our cities because they are based on fossil fuels, everything we do in our urban modernity. And so cities tend to heat up more. And as a result, we have, as I said already, the highest mortality rates are, of course, in cities. We have general public health deterioration, because heat actually manages to go and find the most vulnerable, socioeconomically the most vulnerable, but also health-related, the most vulnerable people. the people that are pregnant, the little children, the older people, the people that have pre-existing conditions, and health deterioration is seen from physical health to mental health is a very, very strong. We see like an exacerbation of the health conditions for our populations that are the most vulnerable. We have, of course, higher energy consumption, so higher cost for the pockets of our people. We have very important economic and productivity losses, which we are starting to get more and more research that shows that it's very significant. We also have, in the economic and productivity losses, we also have very high levels of accidents that are linked to people that link work-related accidents to high levels of heat. And these are other types of research and information that we are discovering. We also have, and we don't have much research on that, but to link increased community and gender violence with extreme heat, what we do have some reports on that. We need much more research on it to actually make this particular link. Of course, higher pollution that keeps kind of is stuck onto the city because of the heat pressure, and of course all of these phenomena that are linked to heat, which is drought, wildfires, floods. We've seen extraordinary floods, and we are people like me who are not meteorologists are starting to understand how flooding is linked to extreme heat and how humidity actually creates this intense kind of atmospheric conditions that then create these incredible floods that we are dealing with all around the world. And then, of course, land erosion and extremely serious biodiversity losses. Infrastructure, failing infrastructure, energy and transport systems are probably the ones that are the most directly affected. And something that is extremely important during heat wave is, of course, food and water insecurity. Because when it's extreme heat, we really need more water to deal with all of the issues that extreme heat creates. And my final slide, which I can't move to now, yes, is the solutions, and I will quickly kind of go through them and finish with that. As far as I'm concerned, I see the solutions because I've been working in the city of Athens, but talking with other cities as well that have used this kind of triptych is the awareness raising, preparedness, and redesign. And awareness raising is really important for the reasons I said already. One of the most interesting actions that we've been taking is creating categorization of heat waves, which is specifically linked to cities, which we can discuss, but it's kind of an important, I think, aspect and a game changer. But also the whole early warning systems for all, that is one of the very important aspects and a priority directly from Antonio Guterres, is something that we are all kind of working on, and it links the awareness with the preparedness, because preparedness is all of the things we can do to protect the most vulnerable during heat waves, and it's a whole series of things from insurance to or energy kind of backups to soft actions like body systems. And the big one and final one is the redesign, which is how do we redesign our cities to make them cooler and to make them more desirable and more healthy for the people that live in them and for the ecosystems that live in them. And nature is the most important thing, but there's a whole series of things that we can do in our cities to actually make them better, much, much better. So I'm going to close here and give the floor to the experts. And thank you very much for the invitation, Andrew. It's great to be here among you.
Linio, thank you ever so much for your introduction. And I think between your expert view and really framing the critical nature of the issue we have at hand and the broader scope that Sebastian mentioned at the start, we have a fantastic base to now dive into some more both technical but also local experiences on how we are looking at solutions and we are anticipating these risks increasing in the future, and what can we do together, what can we do in our respective capacities to work. You mentioned a few areas of solution around awareness, preparedness, redesigning cities. We move into a section now where we will be looking at two key components or two major risks that come to mind when thinking of the global impacts of climate change in Europe and the Mediterranean basin, generally speaking, which are, of course, urban heat. And we'll hear from Lisa in a little bit around what happens at a city level, what kind of solutions are we identifying. And Milan has a lot of work done already, some ambitions in that area. So Lisa from the Urban Resilience Department will tell us a little bit more about this. But prior to moving to Lisa, we will hear from one of our key experts from our European Science and Technology Advisory Group, Jean-Louis Rossi, who is assistant professor at the University of Corsica and has a vast experience in the topic of wildfire from the scientific perspective. We asked Jean-Louis to share with us a few views on what can science tell us in terms of identifying those solutions. So Jean-Louis, without further ado, I pass the floor over to you. I see you're able to share screen, so we're all good to go. Over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. I hope that my screen is on your, my slide is on the screen.
Perfect.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. And as Andrew said, I'm going to talk about wildfire risk and the role of science. The term wildfire, also known as forest fire, bushfire, or wildland fire, is commonly used to refer to unwanted fires that burn forest and wildlands. Wildfires are a complex phenomenon and mechanisms of environmental parameters and physical processes. These interactions, which occur over a wide range of space and time scales, regulate fire behavior. I think that everyone has noticed that the nature of forest fires has changed. As it was reported by scientists, only 2% of this past year's forest fires caused the most important damages. The now famous Black Saturday disaster is a global benchmark for the destructive power of forest fires. Forest fires are an extremely serious problem, entailing considerable social, economic, and environmental costs. The main issue nowadays is the emergence of high-intensity fire events. Devastating wildfires ravage vast areas of the world, and this pattern is becoming more and more familiar as similar events happen every year. These extreme fires are very difficult to control and often overwhelm suppression capabilities. Extreme wildfires are not only dangerous because of their impact on humans, climate, and ecosystems, but also because their behavior is unpredictable and uncontrollable. This type of fires are characterized by sudden change of the fire behavior, spotting activities, high rates of spread, and fire line intensity. Another criterion to define these events is, in fact, the capacity of control that strongly depends on fire behavior, especially the fire line intensity. Thus, several rules can be defined to relate suppression effectiveness to fire intensity. For instance, a surface fire propagating across shrubland, grassland, or forest with an intensity lower than 2 megawatts per meter is considered moderately difficult to control. However, for a fire intensity that exceeds 10 megawatts per meter, especially for crown fire types, an extreme, uncontrollable fire behavior takes place. In this case, the direct attack of the fire front, even with aerial means, becomes inefficient until the atmospheric conditions become less severe. Studies have shown that by the end of the century, the likelihood of catastrophic wildfire events will increase by a factor 1.3 to 1.6. These catastrophic fires have become a new standard, and the real question is why. A lot of reasons can explain this increase of extreme fires. Obviously, the global warming is one of them, but the spreading of the wildland-urban interfaces or the rural depopulation also play a significant role. In fact, 3 underlying factors can trigger destructive wildfires: climate, fuel, and human behavior. Changing weather and climate conditions are one of the main reasons for increased fire risk. We can see that while climate change affects the frequency and intensity of forest fires, wildfire events contribute themselves to climate change, to carbon emissions. As global temperatures are expected to be warmer than current levels and drought more frequent, fire seasons will be prolonged in many ecosystems. Thus, new regions formerly not at high risk for fires will be affected by this risk. But it is recognized that anthropogenic factors have also contributed to increase fire risk worldwide. These include the modification of land use, of course, rural exodus, the abandonment of previously cultivated land, or the spreading of wildland-urban interfaces. We can add that exclusion policies that contribute to fuel accumulation and predominant focus on fire extinction rather than on effective prevention strategy play also a significant role. So, in addition to measures to support the global battle against climate change, appropriate risk reduction policies are needed. In 1916, a study based on the concept of fire-smart territory have shown that firefighting policies in Europe do not sufficiently address the root of the problem and are unlikely to be effective in the future because they focus mainly on suppression for a forest fire event. In addition, expenditure on fire suppression is increasing, but this reactive approach is often ineffective for extreme fires. So, the allocation of resources should build on knowledge of risk to develop efficient fire risk policies and shifting from suppression to prevention. For instance, fuel breaks are a common method of applying hazard reduction. Fuel breaks are man-made areas with a reduced fuel load that act as barriers to stop or slow down fire spread. They are also designed to provide firefighter access and to act as retreat for men and equipment to escape injury. A fuel break is always constructed in anticipation of future fires. Public communication must evolve to adequately reflect the evolving nature of wildfires. Effective risk reduction, in fact, should take into account differences in education, social, cultural backgrounds within communities, and develop appropriate channels of communication and messaging. Anthropogenic factors contribute to an increase in wildfire risk. In a recent study, researchers shows that, in fact, people ignore the probability of disaster risk if the probability is judged to be below a threshold and assess the likelihood of an event by how easily similar examples come to mind. As a result, adequate protection may be deemed unnecessary. So, socioeconomic factors and human behavior need to be further analyzed and included in risk assessment. One of the main challenges for the coming years will be to bridge the gap between the needs of stakeholders and the production of scientific knowledge and tools. A non-exhaustive list of challenges could be, for instance, to better understand how ecosystems respond to fire, how to develop adaptation plans to improve the resilience of the vegetation to climate change could be of primary interest for forest managers. To integrate systematically weather forecasts into fire prevention programs, to improve the quantification of effects of annual to interannual climate variability on wildfires, to bring significant advances in wildfire planning in the decade ahead. Specific studies to investigate wildland urban interface fire risk mitigation methods are also crucial. Indeed, the increased urbanization of all areas, including forest and areas near forest, increases the risk of life-threatening situation. Innovative technologies to improve fire detection and prevention are also needed. The use of a virtual reality system can allow to verify the efficiency of an emergency plan and identify gaps and aspects that need to be improved. We can add that nowadays, the main challenge is the ability to isolate the relevant data and use it appropriately. For instance, in order to be able to identify initial signs of a fire on time and locate it accurately, or to understand the behavior of fires and their possible spread. Mitigating the risk of an extreme wildfire is a general conceptualization which can involve a large number of factors. Indeed, the combination of when we act, what we do, how we do it, and what tools we use can generate very different lines of action. So it is also necessary to collect and share good practices. For instance, the Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction specifically stresses the importance of integrating science and technology into DRR efforts. In conclusion, we can say that climate change, human behaviors, and several underlying factors are creating the conditions for more frequent, intense, and devastating fires now and over the next century. Along with further efforts to combat climate change, this new context requires adapted policies to shift the focus from suppression to prevention, more productive relations between science and governance mechanisms, a better use of risk knowledge, and greater awareness among populations of the need to change behavior are also priorities. We face a difficult challenge, and we know that the answer cannot simply be more science, more technology, or more money. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jean-Louis. This was extremely insightful, a lot of information on how wildfire management is changing and how science is contributing. And I think I would like to invite the participants as well as fellow panelists to drop a few questions if you have any in the Q&A, and I'll gather those for after Lisa's presentation. But maybe one challenge, I would say, if you visualized Jean-Louis's last slide with the conclusions, I would nearly be ready to bet that those same findings will come up when we talk about urban heat. The idea here was really to showcase that in this fight against climate change, whether we talk about wildfire management, urban heat issues, of course, they have their particularities, different ecosystem, different contexts, but the solutions probably lie in very similar types of dynamics. And I think that is, as a transition maybe over to Lisa, to hear from a city who is handling urban heat as an increasing issue, to see if we do recognize some of these solutions and findings that we heard on wildfire risk without simplifying those relationships. I think the message here is clear. It is important to focus on prevention. Lisa, over to you. You're muted, Lisa. I think you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Yes, we do.
Great, thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience. Do you see the full screen presentation?
We do. Everything's
okay,
set. Over
great.
to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Lisa Bitossi, and I work as a project manager for the Urban Resilience Department of Milan Municipality. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of Ilaria Giuliani, that is the Chief Resilient Officer of Milan, that she could not be here today, and I bring her apologies to you all. Today, I am going to talk about how our department develops solutions to climate change challenges, such as urban heat. First of all, I would like to give you a brief overview of who we are. The Urban Resilience Department was established in 2017, thanks to the participation of Milan in the 100 Resilient Cities project. The department operates today as part of a more extensive department that is the Green and Environmental Department, which include other units such as the Air and Climate Unit that work on environmental aspects of the city administration. In this broad structure, the Urban Resilience Department is responsible for developing and coordinating all the activities that are connected to resilience, in order to drive a risk-informed and decision-making process at the municipal level. So having an institutionalized and integrated office for us was a crucial step in recognizing and empowering resilience in the city of Milan, which in many cases struggles to find its place in local administration system, because as we all know, resilience has a really cross-cutting nature. So over the years, the department has developed a working method to ensure the integration of disaster risk reduction into the city's plans. This method consists of an iterative process that develops around the 5 steps that you see illustrated in the slide. The first phase is the setting of a vision, starting with the city's strategic plans and policy documents. The department defines its long-term ambition, that is, what is the change we intend to generate within the municipal structure. So to define the vision, the department refers to documents such as the City Council's planning guidelines and the City Master Plan. But the strategic document that is crucial for us in defining the social and environmental goals of the city is the Air and Climate Plan. The Air and Climate Plan is an action plan adopted voluntarily by the local administration in 2022, so it's quite recent. The purpose of the Air and Climate Plan is to face the climate and air quality crisis by combining mitigation, adaptation, and air quality measures. So being an action plan, it provides 49 tangible actions to implement the environmental transition process that aim to reach both medium and long-term goals concerning the reduction of pollutant concentration in the air, and to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. So it's a quite ambitious plan. All of these documents that I mentioned are critical in defining also the strategic goals that the department must achieve to realize the vision. And here we come to the second phase of the resilient method. So to be able to mainstream resilience at the municipal level, we identified some strategic goals that are to reduce climate risks through the implementation of adaptation actions, to introduce new climate risks into already existing risk management plans. And the extreme heat risk is one of the risks that we are pushing to be integrated in the municipal emergency plan that still has no reference to the heat risk. And another objective is to implement climate change awareness activities, both within and outside the administration. And last but not least, our last goal is to promote and coordinate decarbonization projects within all the administration. So the next phase is called research and innovation, somehow distinguishes our department and allows us to introduce new methods of work in the public administration to improve knowledge of the causes and impacts of climate change, and also to promote the implementation of resilient. In particular, participation in international initiatives such as MCR2030 allows us to include in the team experts and tools that help us ensure a certain degree of innovation and multidisciplinarity in the public administration processes. Currently, the department has 9 European undergoing projects that allow the department to collect and analyze new data and update risk assessments, and also to do thematic research and experiment innovative solutions to the climate crisis. So through all these analyses, we can promote risk-informed urban planning and decision-making process, and therefore we can update the strategic documents that generated our vision and create new resilient guidelines as well. So all the illustrated action cannot be implemented in isolation and without the cooperation of other departments and without the support of citizens. For these reasons, the department works on developing participatory co-design and implementation process, targeting 2 types of actors. The first group of actors are the internal departments, and the other group of the actors are citizens. Coming to the first group of actors, the co-design processes that with other departments take different forms depending on the target project or initiative. This happens because through the participation in local and international projects, the department acquires the tools and resources to conduct internal workshops. And this workshop proved crucial in bringing together different departments that often operate in fragmented ways and lack coordination. So all these workshops usually aim at identifying and resolving the obstacles to the implementation of resilience, and also aim at mapping ongoing activities that can be related to resilience, offer a new resilient perspective on existing plans and projects, and prioritize areas that are exposed to high climate risk for urban development plans and regeneration intervention. One of the most recent examples that of a workshop that we had taken is a workshop organized by C40. The aim of the workshop was to help the municipality in identifying climate change adaptation interventions to be implemented in high-risk areas. And the meeting helped us to bring together 2 spatial analyses that were actually produced by 2 different departments of the municipality, but had never come into contact with each other before the workshop. One analysis was aimed at identifying 16 priority projects to be implemented in the coming years to improve the quality and accessibility of urban green spaces and the safety of public spaces. And the main goal was to foster social resilience. The other spatial analysis was the mapping of climate risks that include flood-prone and extreme heat-prone areas. So the overlay of these 2 spatial analyses resulted in the identification of a redevelopment project that would provide greater impact in terms of climate resilience as well, and not just social resilience. And the output you can see here on the right is the Studio Data project located in flood-prone areas. And here are the highlighted priority projects in flood-prone areas.
Lisa, I'd ask you to wrap up, please. Otherwise,
yeah,
we'll
sure.
Thank you.
So all these projects cannot succeed and generate the desired change unless they are shared, understood, and embraced by citizens. So the municipality has developed 3 main initiatives that I will briefly mention to engage citizens and co-design the solution to climate change challenges. The first one is the Permanent Citizens Assembly on Climate, that is designed to give citizens a voice on climate policies and involve them in developing innovative solutions. And the other 2 are the Climate Story on Heatwave in Milan and Climate Campaigners app. There are 2 outputs of Horizon 2020 projects that are aimed to raise awareness about the impact of climate change and what are the causes of climate change and how lifestyle can impact on the reduction and mitigation of climate change. So I hope that this presentation has clearly illustrated how we develop solutions to climate challenges, and I remain available for any question. Thank you.
Lisa, thank you very much. And I think here the key message is the structure, the frameworks, and the vision the city needs to take, but also accompanying it with the right co-designing approaches to involve the different stakeholders and the critical role of citizens. And I think we may be a little bit tight to have an extensive exchange on this specific area. So I will say that please, I invite you to think about following up with the speakers, or if you have any questions. I just wanted to flag 2 questions that came up quickly, Jean-Louis. Maybe you can answer in 1 minute if you have a chance. Those were addressed to you. One is, do we consider wildfire management into climate change scenarios, or is it done, in your view, is it done sufficiently? And another question which was around the fuel breaks and the prevention examples, and are there other forms of solutions such as agroforestry and landscape management that can be used? The very difficult task for you to do that in 1 minute. Over to you, Jean-Louis. Thank you.
I will be short and brief. For the first question, to my knowledge, this is not yet the case, but in my opinion, it is crucial. In fact, it's one of the main challenge to integrate this new context. In fact, it's a global new context, and to see how we can adapt our policies and like that. And in fact, wildfire generate climate change, and climate change are an impact on wildfire. It's like in mathematics recurrence method. For the second case, yes, of course, agroforestry is a good solution. In Corsica, we are working on the global policy to reduce this risk. And we have a research project entitled Goliath with this global point of view with the integration on agroforestry. So yes, it's one of the solution. It's not the solution, but it is what I said. It's to share good practices, and agroforestry, it's one of the good practices.
Thank you very much. And I think if I can take away a couple of thoughts here, the perspective here on finding the solutions. Clearly, the target is more prevention. Target is a change of culture, a raising awareness, an effort to break silos and co-designing approaches, whether it's different techniques or whether it's different sectors of a different community, such as we heard from Lisa, from different departments coming together. And then, of course, the citizen engagement. Jean-Louis, for another conversation, I'd be very interested to hear how you see citizen engagement in wildfire risk management. It's a bit of a challenging question, but maybe we can follow up on that ourselves afterwards. But I would like to move on to our next segment, which is really now the exercise we asked the colleagues is to, building on what we just heard of the challenge, the solutions that are being identified, how should we start anticipating the future? How do we start looking ahead? We asked our very good colleague and long-standing friend and MCR2030 Resilience Hub from the city of Matosinhos, Sousa Gonçalves, to join us today to share a vision, again, from the local level on how some of these risks, which may not have been central on your municipality's radar, is getting there. And how are you looking at the future when addressing this increasing risk of urban heat and fire management, if you have any thoughts on that. So, Susanna, over to you.
Hello, thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone, dear colleagues, everyone that is listening to us online. Well, as you told, Matosinhos is a city in the north of Portugal, so we are really close to the sea. And since a few years ago, we didn't experience in Matosinhos many impacts on climate change, especially on heat waves. But in the last few years, we've been expecting more and more impacts on heat waves. As most of the experts say, Portugal is going on a path to only have 2 seasons, winter and summer. And that's a crucial impact in our strategy on disaster risk reduction, because if we only have 2 major seasons, winter and summer, we really need to attend the problem regarding with hot and cool waves. So as temperature is increasing, and we can feel that in our city, the temperature increasing, we've been experienced in these early days of October and last day of September, temperatures around 30 degrees here in Matosinhos, which is temperatures in the high season in high summer, and we are almost supposedly almost in winter, and winter is coming, and we still have this high temperatures, and this made us look to heat waves in a different way. We realized that we need to take action in our city, and we divide this action in 4 areas. The first area that we look for to take action is awareness. We are working on the awareness of our community, and in that area, in awareness, we have 3 different sectors that we are working on. Children and youth. We have an awareness academy here in Matosinhos where people can learn more about risks and also how to act in the face of an accident or a catastrophe. And one of our areas work in the academy is heat waves, especially because we are a municipality with a large coastline, mostly with beaches. And that's a problem that most people, when they think about heat waves, they think about wildfires, they think about the increase of the temperature and the impacts of that temperature in the community. But we also have a problem regarding our beaches. And that's one of the areas that we are working on our Awareness Academy. The other areas that we are working also in the awareness is the elder citizens of Matosinhos, with communications that we take to social centers to help them prevent health problems regarding to the heat waves, as we already seen in this webinar. It's one of the major issue regarding climate change, the heat wave. So this is one fringe of our population, of our community, that we are working on and that we are very concerned. The other one are people with disabilities. Also, we take communications to support homes with people with disabilities, and if they can go, we take them also to our Awareness Academy, and there we work with them on all these risks, including heat waves. Our second action is protecting our territory against forest fire. As Jean-Louis told, forest fire is one of the major impacts in cities and in Portugal, also regarding heat waves and climate change. Fires are more aggressive, are bigger, the temperatures are higher, so the forest fires are more dangerous, and the means that we have to respond to forest fires are being more and more inefficient, and we have to find new strategies to prevent forest fires, not only to act when forest fires happen, but to prevent forest fire. That's what we are trying to do here in Matosinhos. We are trying to build a strategy and implementing this strategy to create a resilient forest, making the transition to a more native forest again, because we are losing all our native species. And now we are trying to make this transition to native forest again. Well, this project is hard, is a very hard process, and a very demanding also, because we need to clean the forest, we need to combat invasive species, and we need to reforest. And the major problem is financing. How can we finance that? Especially when most of the forests are private. Here in Portugal, most of the forest areas are private. And how can we help private sector to invest in this type of program? And also how do local authorities can have funding to invest in this transition process? That for us, it's one of the goals that we need to achieve in the next few years if we want to prevent forest fires. So in this field, we find investment a major step to be taken to help local governance and to help cities and countries to implement some strategies to prevent forest fires. Well, the third area that we are working on also in heat waves is, as I told you earlier, coastline, our coastline and our beaches. In our city, as I said, we have 60 kilometers of coastline, and 95% of these kilometers are beaches. And what we've been experiencing is that people are using our beaches for a long period of time, not only the beach bathing time that is setting in our country that goes to 50 of June to 50 of September. And now we have people using our beach, our sea, our coastline to have summer activities, although we are not in summer anymore. And we don't have any lifeguard. We don't have any prevention of accidents in beaches. So here in Matosinhos, we created a team of municipal lifeguards that work on beaches all year. And just for curiosity, in the last weekend, we saved 9 lives here in the beaches of Matosinhos. So it's the 30th of September, and 1 of October is way ahead from the bath time in Portugal. And we had all these activities in our beaches. And when I say 9 lives saved is 9 lives that they have to take from, they have to support and take from the sea. So they were really in a drowning process that was in some cases more complicated than others, but it is a major problem that we are experiencing in our city because we are a coastal city. And this is a really, really hard project to implement, because it's hard for the community and also for the other actors in the city to understand why we have to have lifeguards all around the year if the bathing time is only for 15th of June to 15th of September. So these numbers are the most important fact that we have to help implementing this project, but it's a hard argument. The fourth and last area that we are working on, and is the area that we are having more difficulties in implementing because it's a new area, it includes a new strategy, is planning. Well, in our master plan for the city planning, we made some changes with the creation of some sharing areas in the city and the promotion of some green areas to help city cool our city. But in this area we really feel that we have to do more regarding the way that we build our homes, the way that we design our cities, and also the way that we live our own lives, because we need to learn how to live with these heat waves and this increasement of the temperature in the outside environment. So in Matosinhos, these are the four areas that we are working on. We feel that we have to work much more. We have to increase, we have to develop more all these areas that we are working on. But because, as Andrew said, this is relatively new for us in Matosinhos, because until a few years ago we didn't experience any of these problems, because, as I said, we are a coastal city. We have the coastal breeze to prevent some of these problems related to the heat waves, but this problem is really increasing, and we need this kind of discussion to learn more about what we can do, what other cities are doing, what the academy is doing, and this is a very important way to learn and to help implement new strategies in cities. And as I say, and always say in every meeting that I'm part of, everything starts in cities. We can think at national level, regional level, wherever we want, but problem starts in cities. And with heat wave, although it's a worldwide problem, most of the problems, or all the problems, starts in cities. So we have to work in cities. We have to make cities develop plans to implement strategy to prevent heat waves and the impact in their community. All those plans need to be connected at regional and national level. So with that, we can work also in the worldwide level with all this connection made. So thank you for the opportunity to being part of this webinar. And I'll be here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I'll invite participants to drop questions in the Q&A. And I see for some of the previous speakers, a few questions have come up, so feel free to respond in writing if you wish. But Susanna, this was extremely insightful, and I think a very practical example that with new challenges come new responsibilities and new priorities that you need to identify. The first thing that comes to mind is a city with 95% of beaches along 60 kilometers of coastline would not be a central issue for heat waves. But of course, you identify some very practical issues that may be very specific to the context, but demonstrate that we need to adapt. We need to redesign the approach we work on, and doing so, of course, in an inclusive way. It was very interesting to hear about how you're working on citizen engagement with youth, with persons with disabilities. And of course, highlighting, as you said at the end, that link between the local, the national, and even the regional levels, and ensuring a consistency and a coherence in the approach, recognizing that the cities remain at the front line of these issues. So, Susanna, thank you ever so much. And I think what we wanted to do now is to turn to Jesus San Miguel from the Joint Research Center of the European Commission to go back to the issue of wildfire management and go now back to the idea. We've heard of local experiences on finding solutions and looking to the future. We heard from Jean-Louis on the existing solutions in wildfire management. Jesus, what do you think are the priorities looking ahead? I think some of the questions raised already are touching upon certain things you're going to talk about when we're talking about projections and so on. But how can we look ahead when we talk about wildfire management, and what are some of the priorities there? So over to you, Jesus, the floor's all yours. I see your slides. If you put them in slideshow mode, you'll be good to go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
introduction, Andrew. Yeah, in fact, the previous speaker.
You may have to move your mic a little bit closer to your mouth. We don't hear you very well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation to be here. Real pleasure for me to join you today. Many of the points that I will show discuss in the presentation, in the short presentation that I have prepared, have been already mentioned by the previous speakers, which is good because we can see that we agree on the main points of the problem and also agree on the main potential solutions that could be implemented. Just as an introduction, I'm part of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and our role is precisely to support policies in the European Union by providing evidence-based data. So as regards wildfires, the first part of my analysis will deal with analyzing the situation we are facing now. Jean-Louis mentioned that we are getting more fires and more catastrophic fires in recent years, and that is clearly shown by the data in the European Union. So the graph that you see here shows with the preliminary data for 2023, that is a clear increase in the number of fires and also in the burnt area. 2022 was the second worst year in the European Union after 2017. And then the area burned and the economic damages were very high. And 2023 has not been so far as bad as 2022, but it has been a very peculiar year because we had critical fires, not many of them, but really very large. And Jean-Louis mentioned that the intensity of the fires we are facing now is so high that the aerial means, for instance, are not effective. Something that we are observing, in addition to the increase of the number of fires or burnt areas in the European Union in recent years, despite the increase in firefighting means in all the countries, is that the area that is being affected is different from what we had in the past. So here in this histogram, you have in orange, you have the area that is the burnt area that happens in the Mediterranean region. And in gray and orange, then you have the area that is affected in Central and Northern Europe. Just looking from 2006 until now, we see that there is an increase of area affected in Central and Northern Europe. And this was is up to 2022. That was one of the triggers why the ministers of the countries of the European Union met last year and decided the increase of support by the European Union to its member states in providing firefighting means. I fully agree with the highlight of Jean-Louis that this is not the right approach. Clearly, increasing the budget for firefighting only is not the solution. We need to work on prevention. But at the European Union level, most of the policies that have to deal with forest fires, prevention, forest management, planning, all those are in the hands of member states. So there is very little that the European Commission can do to affect that. One of the potential solutions was to increase the budget. If we look at the situation this year, you see on the left-hand side, you see the histogram of cumulative burnt areas. And by the 23rd of September, we had in Europe around 434,000 hectares mapped. These are fires bigger than 30 hectares. So in total, the area is around 490,000, nearly 500,000 hectares, which is similar to the burnt area in 2021. And you see on the right-hand side that the fire season are getting longer. So we have many fires outside the traditional fire season, which used to be July, August, September. And now we have fires from the beginning of the year, many fires and large burnt areas early in the fire season. And the fire season lasts until very late. So you see on one of the gray peaks in October was due to the fires in Portugal, which in 2017 took place completely outside the traditional fire season. The most catastrophic ones were in June and October. So what are we observing? Then what we are observing is longer wildfire seasons that last from January until October, with critical fires in the whole period. The expansion of the areas that are being affected by fires. Fires used to be a problem of the Mediterranean countries, and that is no longer the case. It's a problem of the Central European countries and also Northern countries. So the situation has become more complicated. And then we are having critical events. And critical events are those that are sometimes called mega fires, are those events that cannot be fought. The firefighting means are really not efficient fighting these fires. And the only possibility is to wait until the weather conditions improve and the fires can be tackled. And many of these fires have already happened this year. And this is not only a problem in the European Union. So we have the experience of Canada this year. You see, they have around 18 million hectares burned this year, which will have a huge impact in terms of greenhouse gases emissions. And the same situation in Chile. In Chile, they faced the situation in 23 similar to the situation in 2016-17. So what can we do with science? What we are doing at the Joint Research Center is trying to provide information on fire danger conditions. And the information we provide gives the potential users of the system, so firefighters, fire management planners, information on the conditions under a fire which is ignited will burn. So the higher the fire danger, the higher the intensity of the fire, and the fastest the progression of this fire. This helps in increasing preparedness and anticipating to the fires. This is the situation of large fires this year, and you see fires bigger than 5,000 hectares in Spain, Portugal, the Canary Islands, and many in Greece, and also in Northern Africa. And these are the critical fires I mentioned before, which are a result of what we are experiencing in terms of higher temperature and climate change. So when we are trying to reduce the fire risk, that is what I just pasted on the slide is the formula or the equation to compute fire risk. So fire risk has two components. The first one is danger or hazard, and that is composed of fire ignitions and fire behavior. In Europe and also globally, most of the fires are caused by humans. So in Europe, 96% of the fires are caused by human actions. So there is very little left to nature for natural ignitions. So on that we can work. Fire behavior depends on the type of the fuels on the ground, but also on weather and climate conditions. We cannot change weather and climate conditions, but we can work on the fuel management. Previous speakers mentioned the analysis of awareness, redesign, planning, that can help in minimizing fire danger. And then we have to work on the vulnerability of the people. Decreasing vulnerability by increasing awareness, increasing education on how to behave in case of fires, and then also lessen the vulnerability of the population. And that goes also in the work that was mentioned for cities. So establishing points where people can go in case of a fire, limiting or increasing the distance between the vegetation and the housing, building with materials that are fire resistant, etc. And what we've done, and that is the situation we face in Europe, is that every country has a system, but normally the systems for the computation of fire risk are different in the different countries. So the idea was to try to standardize a methodology that would allow for planning at the European level. And that was done with the expert group on forest fires, with which the JRC works, also the environment, which is now made of 43 countries in the region. With that, we established parameters to assess a wildfire risk in an homogeneous way at the European level. And I just pasted here the link all the information on the different components of the fire risk are available there for users. So what are we going to face in the future? So the analysis we did and was published, I think, last year or the year before, we analyzed how fire danger will evolve in the next years. And we see that in the next years, we are going to higher temperatures. I think Eleni mentioned that we are talking now about 2.2 degrees for Europe. Clearly, the situation in the Mediterranean region, 1.5 degrees, we have already reached, and maybe we have already reached the 2 degrees or even higher. What we show here is the number of days in which we have a very high or extreme fire danger. And you can see as the temperature increases, the number of days for high or extreme fire danger increases. What do we find then? That the population that is at risk of fire is increasing from around 7 million with 1.5 degrees to 11 million with 2 degrees to 15 million of people. Being around 63 million, the people that are currently affected by days of extreme or very high or extreme fire danger. So what can we do? We can have adaptation options, and these have been mentioned by previous speakers. So we have to reduce fire ignitions. So that means education and awareness, and we need to educate population how to act in case of fire. We can also manage the landscape, increasing distance from the houses to the wildland. Jean-Louis mentioned the wildland-urban interface is the main area of risk of fire. So when people are really dwelling in the wildland areas. So we have to limit the amount of fuels, and we have to remove the vegetation near the populated areas. And we have to look into future planning. So, and I think Susanna mentioned moving to less flammable species and planting a mix of species. But we have a problem in the Mediterranean region is that most forests are not profitable. So investment is very hard to get. And we should not forget, we have to adapt, but we have to be ready. So we need to increase preparedness and also to increase not increase response, but maybe increase efficiency in the response by prepositional means and by incorporated new means for firefighting. And I think with this, I will close and pass the word back to you, Andrew. Thank you very much for your attention. Happy to reply to any questions.
Thank you very much, Jesus. This was extremely insightful, and I think connecting, and thank you for making all these connections with the previous interventions you heard. I think the flow really justified itself here to hear back, going back to really those predictions and what we have to expect in the future, really picking up on few elements, and really Laurent will have the tough job of wrapping this up, but I really wanted to take away a few key words which I heard, which was awareness raising, prevention, planning, and preparedness. All these elements, whether we're talking about localized actions on urban heat management or a more technical work on wildfire management at a local level, also at a European level, all these elements connect and come back to the front. So I think it really demonstrates that whatever the angles we've heard from today, we are hearing these keywords coming back as really sort of red lines and common threads to the challenges, the solutions, and what we may need to work towards the future. We have a couple of minutes, and there have been a few questions coming in across the chat to a number of speakers, but I wanted to maybe pick up one question here that came in from one of the guests, maybe back to you, Susanna, which is, in your opinion, what are the reasons that there is not already more preventive cooperation between authorities on the national levels and the municipal level? You mentioned that challenge, and you mentioned maybe some of the work. I know Portugal has done a lot in that area. I don't know if you're in a position to answer that question, but maybe if you are able, or if you have a few thoughts, it would be good to hear from you.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, well, here in Portugal, we have a great connection between the local and the national level. As we are a small country, we have a really easy connection between local and national. I suppose that in larger countries, the connection between local and national is more difficult because they have regional levels in the middle. And we also, although we also have regional level here in Portugal, as we are a small country, it's easy to connect to national level. But for us, the most important topic in this area is that all of the strategies in climate change and risk management are made for national levels, and most of the time to achieve the goals that especially are being set in climate change response, it's getting hard for countries, because if we don't implement strategies on local levels, if we don't develop goals on local level, it's going to be hard for the national level to achieve the goals that they set for. Because, as I said in my time in this webinar, everything happens in local level, and if we are able in a local level to prevent, to keep our community resilient, to help them be prepared to respond to disasters, to help them be aware of the danger that they are in and how to act in face of a disaster, to build a resilient community, we can make a huge contribution for the national strategy for disaster risk reduction in our country. So I think that we need to focus more attention in local level, although I don't think that it's to be part of a local strategy. We need to have a different national strategies. Not what I'm saying. It's we need to look more for strategies on local level, so that with these strategies implemented on local level, we can grow to national level. Because one of the goals of civil protection, that is one of the areas that works on disaster risk reduction on cities and countries, is that we need to grow from the bottom to the top. So I think that we need to look to that major goal of civil protection and start to work on the bottom to the top, on the local governments, to have results on national and international level. And I think that the connection of the strategies between local and national governments need to be more strengthened, need to be worked on, and especially cities need to be part of the strategy, need to be part of the major decision makers. So when we invest, we need to invest in cities, we need to invest in local communities, indigenous communities. We need to invest where the accidents happen, where things really happen, and where we can prevent. We can have a major national fire, but it starts in a specific point of a specific city, of a specific community. If we can work with that community, maybe we can prevent the next forest fire. And that's one of the things that we really need to address in the near future.
Thanks a lot, Susanna, and you're speaking to one of the key challenges faced in implementing the Sendai framework and its priorities, that governance level and the interaction between different levels of governance. So maybe an idea for future opportunities for such discussions, if we were to look at some ideas to the future for reconvening such conversations with this space. But without further ado, I wanted to allow Laurent Alfonso, who is a senior advisor on civil protection at the Union for the Mediterranean, a firefighter by training and background. Laurent, it's great to have you with us. We wanted to allow you to share your final thoughts on what your take was on this topic, and also building into that what you've heard over the last hour and a half. I know we're a little bit over time, but we can eat up a couple of minutes after 11:30 CET, no problem. So please take the time you need to reflect on your thoughts. And the floor is yours for these final remarks. Thank you, Laurent.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and it's a pleasure to be there and to share this closing remarks with all of you, our great experts and friends, and also to share this webinar with our audience. And I know that the participants are very familiar colleagues in the DRR and civil protection family. So thank you very much to all of them to attend this very great webinar. So for me, it's a privilege to share with all of you some closing remarks. First of all, I would like to thank and stress the great collaboration that we have between EFDRR and the Union for the Mediterranean. I think that our high-level speakers today brilliantly covered the webinar topic of today, which was innovating heat and Wi-Fi governance. So I will draw some tracks based on governance. We all know that prevention is key, but I would like to stress how the concept of governance and processes of governance. Susanna just answered a question based on this, and it's important to link the different levels of governance from local to intermediary, national, and without forgetting international cooperation also. So as Sebastian described in his introductory speech, so the summer of 2024 will be remembered as one of the extremes on both sides of the Mediterranean. Extreme storms, droughts, heat waves, wildfires, earthquakes. Slovenia and Libya braved floods. The historic lack of rain continued to take its toll on Spain. Blazes raged across Greece, Italy, Cyprus, and Tunisia. And the Mediterranean Sea broke yet another heat record. Temperatures still remain high, including in October in our countries. The Mediterranean, sorry for the slide, the problem, here we are, sorry. So yeah, the MEDEC, Mediterranean Expert on Climate Change and Environmental Change report, MED assessment, which is an international research network, have demonstrated the region is warming Mediterranean at a rate of 20% faster than the global average, and an estimated of 250 million of its residents are expected to be water poor within 20 years. And under current policies, temperatures are on course to increase by 2.2 degrees by 2040. Unfortunately, these facts are yet another reminder that the time to act is now before devastation caused by extreme weather becomes even more commonplace. The Union for the Mediterranean is working on an interesting scheme of regional dialogue platforms, which brings together countries, international organizations, and civil society organizations. Of course, UNDR and in particular the Europe and Central Asia Regional Office is part of it and makes very appreciated and constructive contribution. I thank you all for that. UFM is also fully supporting the EFDRR roadmap 2021-2030 and MCR2030 process. The science of attribution make it possible to make the cause and effect link between global warming, drought, and by extension forest fires. Our brilliant experts and colleagues in this webinar have perfectly described the mechanisms of exacerbation of the phenomena. In particular, Jesus and Angel with the technical presentations. And whole of society approach that embraces the capacity, experience, and expertise of all sectors, public and private, and communities at all levels of governance will accelerate efforts to strengthen the resilience of cities and citizens. Thinking new governance can be based on integrated disaster risk management means the management of all types of disasters and all phases of disaster management, focusing on hazard and vulnerability, including the underlying causes of risks, and emphasizing a multi-level, multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary coordination among stakeholders. It includes 4 dimensions. First, sectoral; second, spatial and hierarchical; third, temporal, and externally with other cross-cutting societal challenges. The challenge is to think simple in complex and changing environments in order to always align and maintain permanent vertical and horizontal connecting points. The equation, of course, is difficult to resolve when we consider the strategic and political decision-making levels. The geopolitical obstacles sometimes, practitioner constraints, the citizens' engagement in policies on climate action, and their condition to their community's resilience. As Lisa perfectly described as a good example for Milano city, and Susanna with bridging all the different levels. Recently, many reports and studies have highlighted that to better address increasing wildfire risks, equal emphasis must be placed on both the inbuilt and built environment. Land abandonment can significantly impact wildfire dynamics and risk, as Jean-Louis mentioned. When land is left unmanaged and neglected, vegetation becomes overgrown and susceptible to ignition, increasing the likelihood of wildfires. Jesus again mentioned that most of wildfires are caused by human hand. To address this issue, civil protection and cooperation are vital. Collaborative efforts involving communities, fire services, and government agencies are essential for fire prevention, early detection, and effective response. We need to coordinate different bodies, entities with expertise in urban planning, disaster resilience, wildfire risk, and research and science to holistically address the needs, gaps, and opportunities to improve long-term resilience of the built environment. For me, one of the keys lies in the implementation of platforms which bring together actors who share complementary skills, motivation, and a common interest. These platforms, like ecosystems, will interconnect, and this is what EFDRR does perfectly with a remarkable leadership. As a concrete example, and in contributing to these efforts, we are currently working at the UFM level on the Mediterranean framework on civil protection. Science, and in particular, the latest and the best technologies available, must complement this collaborative approach in the upstream, during, and after phases, on the basis of scenarios, planning, and of course, financing. Men and women must know each other, introduce the science for policy concept in times of peace and times of crisis to build permanent bridges, leaving no one behind. So I will finish there with this reflection that I give to all of you, and thank you again very much for the invitation. Thank you.
Laurent, thank you very much. And I really appreciate the final words you used, which echo Sebastian's initial words of leaving no one behind in this entire process. And I think we heard over the last hour and a half the key challenges, the number of solutions, what we're looking forward to the future, and what are, as you echoed, some of the challenges in doing so moving forward. And I think we'll continue engaging, as you said, through existing platforms, engage with different partners, engage different levels of governance in reinforcing our common effort to build resilience to disaster risks, which are intrinsically linked to the climate crisis. And I think we heard today, whether we look at it from an urban heat perspective at a very localized level or wildfire management from a more technical level, we are facing challenges of slightly different kinds, but solutions are quite common and connect to some of the key messages we've been trying to advocate here and that we hope you take away from this webinar. awareness raising, prevention as well as response, preparedness and planning, redesigning, co-designing and inclusive approaches, involving citizens and involving different levels of governance. I will stop here because I think it will be difficult to give full credit to all the rich elements we've received, but I take away a few keywords here, and I take away a lot in terms of the need to continue the good collaborations amongst each other as a community and on the different fronts. There were a few questions I saw different speakers were able to build back on. We will organize the dissemination of the presentation, which will compile in one so that you can have access to the different elements. And a number of those have hyperlinks, so feel free to go and check out more about what you just heard over the last hour and a half. With this, I would like to thank you all for having taken the time to be with us this morning or this afternoon if you're in a different time zone. It's been a pleasure. I would like to thank all our panelists for taking the time and for sharing such rich and well-structured contributions. And we look forward to continue the work together. And on behalf of the MCR2030 colleagues, the ESTAG Network, EFDRR, Roadmap Secretariat, and all the partners involved in the preparation of this webinar, I'd like to thank you and wish you all a very pleasant day, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.